Thank you for checking out this tour of standards-based grammar. I'm going to use the grade 7 and 8 edition to show you all the features of this program. The grade 7 and 8 edition is also the exact same book as the Homeschool edition. The reason why the grade 7 and 8 and Homeschool editions are the same book is that they both serve a similar purpose. Since the standards for grades 7 and 8 only have a few specific standards, the goal for these middle schoolers is mainly to master whatever skills they haven't mastered from grades 3 through 6. Therefore, the grades 7 and 8 edition will have all the standards for grades 3 through 6, and it's designed in a way that helps the middle school teacher identify the gaps in their students' grammar education so they can focus on their students' trouble areas and not waste valuable class time on things they already know. And for the homeschool teacher, he or she can start pretty much at any grade level and take their time and hit all the standards from grades 3 through 8 at a pace that works for them. It does go a little quickly, so for the homeschool teacher, if you're beginning at grades 3 or 4, I'd consider getting the standards-based grammar edition specific for a 3rd grader or a 4th grader. Also, since many standards build on each other, there's lots of natural review as you progress through the book, so many of the standards stay fresh as you move from unit to unit. Another recommendation is to use standards-based grammar with Writing Tricks Plus and the Complete Writing Program. These books, along with standards-based grammar, train your students to use many of the grammar skills as powerful sentence writing strategies. I call these strategies writing tricks, and the students just internalize the ability to write powerful sentences. If you want to see a demonstration on how this happens, I recommend that you watch my tips and advice video, which should be on any of the standards-based grammar product pages. But here, in this shorter tour, I'm going to show you the features that make this grammar program so powerful. My goal here is to show you that standards-based grammar is powerful enough for you to use as your daily grammar program, but also affordable enough to get if you only need a couple of units. With that in mind, here's a list of the features in standards-based grammar along with the timestamps in case you want to jump ahead to another section. What I'm going to show you is, first, I'm going to cover the worksheets and how they're designed to help you get the most out of your grammar instruction time. You'll also get to see several sample worksheets as well. Next, you'll get to see the extensions, which is a really powerful tool to get your students using the grammar skills in the context of actual writing situations. You'll see how the tests and checklists work together to really supercharge your program. And finally, I'll quickly review the student consumables option, which can save you tons of time in your prep work. So let's begin with the worksheets. Here's a quick look at the table of contents so you can see the standards that are covered. Feel free to click pause if you'd like to take a longer look at the table of contents here. But I'm going to move right into the first worksheet, and that's going to be true for many of the worksheets in this video. I might be jumping very quickly, so just pause if you feel like you want to see it a little longer. So obviously, the worksheets are the heart of the book. So let's take a look at how the worksheets are organized. Now, this is standards-based grammar, so each grammar skill is a standard. And you can see here on this worksheet that the standard is complex sentences. The way this book is organized, the first worksheet of every standard will have a lesson at the top. For the busy teacher who has so many lessons to teach in a day, it's great because it just takes a minute or two to review the lesson and you're ready to go. The lesson will either be in a box or it'll be up there at the top of the worksheet. I recommend that when you teach the lesson, you annotate the worksheet with your students by highlighting and circling keywords. This will keep them engaged, it'll keep them with you, it'll keep them focused on what you're trying to explain. Then you'll have the annotations and the lesson from this first worksheet to use as a review for future worksheets. And the students can just go back to this first worksheet when they're doing the other worksheets, and they have a reminder there and combined with the grammar journal is a great way for the students to just refresh their memories when they do the other worksheets. I also recommend that you have the students keep a grammar journal. There will be times when you want to extend the lessons, and the grammar journal is a great place to do this. Also, you're going to see in the next section, the extensions, the students will need a place to practice their extensions and practice their grammar skills in real writing situations. And the grammar journal is a great place to do this as well. In the tips and advice video, I go into much greater detail on how to use this grammar journal. So again, I highly recommend that tips and advice video. Next, after you go over the lesson from the first worksheet, you'll find an activity that starts getting the students comfortable with this new skill. So when you begin a standard, you'll have a lesson and you'll have an activity that gets the students comfortable with this new standard that you're really about to get into. Okay, so now you can see that this is worksheet number 2 of that series. Going back to worksheet number 1 of complex sentences, this worksheet introduced parts of a complex sentence, such as the dependent clause and the independent clause and the new subordinate conjunction. The cool part of standards-based grammar is that by the time you're finished with this unit, the students will know this vocabulary very well, and they'll even be able to explain it. So the students earlier in standards-based grammar learned the parts of a simple sentence. So now they're going to build on simple sentences and learn about complex sentences. So here on worksheet number 2, the students are going to practice finding subordinate conjunctions, independent clauses, and dependent clauses. And here on the third worksheet, the students are getting comfortable using subordinate conjunctions to make dependent clauses. The students will eventually master the complex sentence so well, they'll progress all the way to being able to write compound complex sentences, which is actually very easy to teach once they've mastered the complex sentence. You can see here, they just write a simple sentence, add a coordinate conjunction, add another simple sentence, then finally add a dependent clause. All of that will make perfect sense to them by the time they finish this unit. And best of all, the students will learn to internalize the ability to write complex and compound complex sentences. You'll see more about how this happens when I go over the extensions, but moving on, I'm going to show you a few more worksheets here. On the next worksheet, you can see that this worksheet on sentence combining helps the students learn to edit their writing. When I was in school, some of my teachers' idea of the editing process was to give us back our writing and say, make it better. I promised when I became a teacher I'd never do that. This inspired me to create a list of ways the students can make their writing better. On these worksheets, the students learn that they can improve the quality of their sentences by combining simple sentences in their writing to create complex sentences, compound complex sentences, or to add variety to their simple sentences. It can be as basic as moving a word or two from one sentence to another, like in sample 1. The high school band gave a 1-hour concert. Or more complex, like number 7. After writing a poem in class, I wrote a song and story. You can see there are several more worksheets here to help them become better at editing their writing. Of course, you'll need to encourage them to use the skill during the writing process. So it's helpful if your students have a writing folder where they can access these worksheets to use as a reference during the writing process. So moving on to the next set of worksheets, here's some worksheets on the parts of speech. As I said earlier, the grades 7 and 8 and homeschool editions move fairly quickly. If you're homeschooling younger students, the grades 3 and 4 editions move much more slowly and give the students lots of time and practice absorbing the many definitions within the parts of speech. In those editions, the students are shown how to create visual mnemonic devices to help put these definitions into their long-term memories. Older students already have more experience with the parts of speech, so they won't need as much time. So here's just a quick peek at how these mnemonic devices work. For nouns, the students will draw a picture of a word that is a person, and the word that they draw should sound like noun. In this example, we use none, or they can use clown or whatever else sounds like noun. Next, they add a picture of a place and a picture of a thing that rhymes with thing. While drawing the pictures, they'll put these three pictures together and practice saying something like, the nun went to the church wearing a ring, person, place, or thing. Or, the clown at the circus was in the ring, person, place, or thing. So whenever the students need to remember the definition of a noun, they'll have that visual trick in their minds, and they'll be able to say the trick, and that will help them recognize when they see a noun. And they'll get lots of practice burning the definition into their minds as they do the worksheets. And the following worksheets will help them lock the definitions of the other parts of speech. You can see verbs, adjectives, and adverbs there, prepositions there, then finally, they'll practice them all together. Just a little more about the parts of speech. Here's the parent checklist for Unit 3 showing the standards for nouns, and the parent checklist for Unit 4 showing the standards for verbs, pronouns, adjectives, and adverbs. Here's a worksheet on adjectives where they learn about comparatives and superlatives. Now, superlative is a really fun word to teach the students. You can tell them that their answers are superlative, and they'll really get a kick out of that. Okay, there are so many worksheets in the Standards-Based Grammar Grade 7 and 8 edition, Homeschool edition. It would take forever to show them all. If you want to see more worksheets demonstrated like I've been demonstrating these worksheets, you can go to any of the grade level product pages like grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you can see demonstrations on those worksheets because all those worksheets are either in this edition, the 7 and 8 homeschool editions, or worksheets very similar to those are in the grade 7 and 8 homeschool editions. Those worksheets were just copied directly into this edition or modified to fit the age level of older students. So you can check those out if you like. And remember, there's an excellent tips and advice video where I go into much more detail about how I teach the worksheets and help the students incorporate these grammar skills into their writing. And one last way to see more worksheets is that you can download sample worksheets here on the product page of the grades 7 and 8 or the homeschool edition web pages. And you can see there that I'm clicking on the link where you can download the worksheets. And I'm showing you how the sample worksheets are being downloaded. And you could check those out to get a better feel for how the worksheets look. So let me just highlight a few more of the popular worksheets from this edition. There's a unit on diagramming sentences. It just goes over the basics of sentence diagramming, but there's so much you can do with this if the students just have a basic understanding of sentence diagramming. I recommend that you check out the grade 6 video or the tips and advice video for more on that. Here's the list of standards from Unit 8. This unit is excellent at helping the students build their vocabulary. By teaching prefixes and suffixes, you help the students learn ways to figure out the definition of thousands of words instead of just making them memorize thousands of words. By memorizing the prefixes and suffixes, the students now have clues to figure out definitions of words, and they don't have to waste time looking up the words. They can just figure it out using the prefixes and suffixes. So there are prefixes like d, dis, in, im, and miss, and just those prefixes help the students unlock the definitions to hundreds of words. Finally, here's a popular worksheet on spelling plurals. For the older students, I mainly highlight rule number 4. When a singular noun ends in O, we usually just add S. However, there are a few words that break that rule. Years ago, my third graders helped me come up with a trick to remember those few exceptions. And the trick basically says, if you can eat it, or it can save you or hurt you, you add ES. So potatoes and tomatoes can be eaten. Tornadoes and heroes can either hurt you or save you. And for buffaloes, you can think of a buffalo burger, which you can eat, or you can think about getting run over by a buffalo, which could obviously hurt you. So it's a really fun trick and a really fun worksheet for the students. The next feature that I'm going to show you is the extensions, and you'll see some of the worksheets that have extensions on them. The extensions really take standards-based grammar to a whole new level. Again, the goal of standards-based grammar is to help the student use grammar skills within the context of actual speaking and writing situations. The extensions are where the magic really happens. After you teach the first worksheet of a standard, many of the follow-up worksheets will have extensions on them. The extension is a small writing assignment where the students are practicing their grammar skills in real writing situations. You can see here on complex sentences number 2, when the students finish the activity at the top, there's an extension down at the bottom. You can see in this 10-minute activity that the students are asked to use each subordinate conjunction from the box in a complex sentence. Next, they need to label the parts of the complex sentence. This means that they are practicing writing complex sentences on their own and reinforcing the vocabulary, locking in the definition for complex sentences. You can make this even more powerful if you have them conference with each other. By having them conference with each other, you'll have dozens of mini lessons happening around your class as the students tutor each other. This helps the advanced students really take this skill to another level and helps emerging writers see more examples of good sentences. Again, I go into much more detail about this in the tips and advice video. And for the homeschool teacher, I've seen homeschool teachers network with other homeschool teachers so their students can conference with each other for activities like this, as well as conferencing for tasks like assessing each other's writing.
Now, when it comes to doing all these extensions, I do the extensions with the students because doing them with the students gives me so many opportunities to model good writing and point out other writing skills as well. Again, I go into more detail about this in that tips and advice video. So again, I'm going to keep pushing that because there's a lot of really good tricks in there.
So very quickly, here are a few more extensions. There's another extension on complex sentences. This time, the students are given a topic and are asked to write a paragraph. So again, they're being asked to use complex sentences in a more realistic writing situation. And here's one on compound complex sentences. Just wait until you see your students writing these kinds of sentences. It's so exciting to see your students' writing get so much better. And if you use standards-based grammar with Writing Tricks Plus or the Complete Writing Program, really the sky's the limit on how well your students' writing can get. And finally, a few more extensions from throughout the book. Here's one on the comma rules, adjectives, and quotations. Here, the students write about things people would say while hitting a piñata as they put the adjective and quotation comma rules in their sentences. And here's one from sentence diagramming. The students have to write their own sentences using adjectives and adverbs, nouns and pronouns, and verbs. Then they have to diagram those sentences. If the students can diagram their own sentences, they've really mastered this skill. So that's it for extensions, a really powerful part of the standards-based grammar program. And let's move on to the next powerful part of standards-based grammar, the tests and checklists. You can see that the test is organized into the 4 standards that were on the parent checklist. There's complex sentences, sentence combining, the 4 types of sentences, and misplaced modifiers. Now, if the student does well on a standard, I put a star on the test. This means that they've mastered the standard. If they don't do so well, I just leave it blank, like on part 2 here, sentence combining, and part 4, misplaced modifiers. On this example, the students pass parts 1 and 3, so they get stars on the test. And on the parent checklist, you'll mark mastery for 1 and 3. And then on the parent checklist, you'll mark non-mastery for number 2 and number 4.
This checklist is part 1 of getting the students the help they need right away for their trouble areas. You could send the parent checklist home for a parent's signature, but you can also send it home with more worksheets, or better yet, a list of websites that offer games or tutorials for grammar skills. Many parents would love to have their children practice the skills they didn't quite get in the class and help them continue practicing these skills at home. It's a great way to partner up with the parents. Some parents may even get a tutor, which would be amazing. And now you're truly a partner with the parents to help get more help for their students and not just abandon them after they take the test. However, before you send the test and checklist home, let's look at another way you can use this parent checklist to help get more help for the students. Now, this here is the student checklist. I keep a copy of this checklist for each student in a file near my desk. And after each test, I'll record the student's results on this checklist. So on this checklist, you can record the student's results here. Then after the test, you can continue to record the results of each test here on the student checklist. It's a great way to keep track of the standards you've taught, as well as a way to keep track of every student's progress all the way to the end of the school year. This is another way to get more help for your students, because both the parent and student checklists can be given not only to the parents, but also to support staff at the school. You may have a classroom aide who works with the students, a parent who comes in to help, or an RSP teacher. Sometimes high schoolers will come over to our campus to tutor the students. This gives them something specific to use to help the students with their trouble areas. Many schools have resource teachers. We call them RSP teachers, who would love to have this information to help them set goals for the students and give them something to work on during their RSP time. There's so much you can do with the tests and checklists here besides just seeing how did they do on an exam and then just walking away.
Finally, regarding the tests and checklists, the grades 7 and 8 and Homeschool edition have 3 extra assessments that the other standards-based grammar editions don't have. Because this edition has so many standards, there's no way a middle school teacher can cover all of them in 1 year. And for the homeschool teacher, you may spend many years going through this book. That's why for the middle school teacher and the homeschool teacher, there are unit assessments after every few units in the book. There's the units 1 through 4 assessment, the units 5 through 7 assessment, and the units 8 through 10 assessment. Now, the middle school teacher can use each of these unit assessments to find the gaps in their students' grammar knowledge, while the homeschool teacher can use the unit assessments to spot check how well their students have retained the grammar skills you've already taught. You can see here on the title page for the assessment on units 1 through 4 that they're going to check the retention on the 22 standards that they've already learned. You can see on this page from the actual assessment, here are 4 of the standards from that unit 1 through 4 assessment. Now let's say that they passed pronouns, subject, object, possessive, and they passed pronouns, antecedents, and indefinite, but didn't pass the other 2. Now, you go back to the student checklist where you were keeping track of their progress. You can see that before, they did not pass number 17, pronouns, subject, object, possessives, but this time, on the units 1 through 4 assessment, the student did pass it. That means somewhere along the lines, the student figured out that standard. However, the student did pass number 18 before, but did not pass it on this unit assessment. That means somewhere along the line, they forgot it. Now, because you're keeping track of their standards on the student assessment, you can make that correction and a notation on the student checklist about those two details, and you'll have the most current information possible. Finally, you now have a choice whether or not you want to review the standards that they're still struggling on for units 1 through 4, or move on to the next part of the grammar program. So these unit assessments are really a powerful way to help the middle school and homeschool teachers get the most out of this standards-based grammar program.
To wrap up this tour, standards-based grammar's goal is to help the students get complete mastery over all the grammar standards and to help them master it so well that they're actually using these standards to make their speaking and writing better. Hopefully you've seen just how powerful this program can be, but there's even one more way to make this program even stronger, and that's by using student consumables. There are several ways to get information on the student consumables. You can click on the consumables link at the top of the web page and get information that way. You can also click on any edition for standards-based grammar on the home page, which will also take you to a link to download more sample worksheets. Then at the bottom of the page will be ordering information, information on purchase orders, and information on the student consumables. Finally, remember there is a video where I show more tips and advice for using standards-based grammar. In that video, along with the tips and advice for the lessons in standards-based grammar, are 3 strategies for teaching your entire writing program that can really change your life. I highly recommend it. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and go create better writers.
CreateBetterWriters.com